Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process and for authors to learn valuable tips on producing and marketing your audiobooks. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. I'm excited to have with me today Dr. Paul Corona, author of The Corona Protocol. Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Becky. It was great to be out with you.
Yeah. So I thought we'd start kind of with the cover, like we do when we're actually, reading or listening to books. And so right on the cover of your book, you start with a really beautifully bold statement: a scientifically proven medical solution to stop addiction, bullying, homelessness, school shootings, and suicide. So I would love for you to tell us about your decisions on putting that bold statement on the cover.
Well, yeah, this is my, I started writing books like 22 years ago. So this is actually my sixth book. My first three books took me about 12 years to complete. Healing the Mind and Body, parts 1, 2, 3. I then wrote two books for doctors. My plan is next to, I want to teach. So I've written two smaller books for doctors I haven't released yet that I'm working on right now. I'm editing right now. So in this book, I really wanted to make it different, and I wanted to make it different than my other books. And I really started thinking about telling stories about people. So this is really a storytelling book, 30 original short stories about different people who struggle with different types of mental illness. So I talk about, at the very beginning, basics like anxiety and depression and bipolar disorder, ADD, and then I move on to more complex things like PTSD, eating disorders, and schizophrenia. So I kind of build up towards the book, towards the middle where I talk about the subtitle subjects. So I wanted to tackle some really difficult subjects that we deal with a lot nowadays. Addiction, homelessness, school shooting, suicide. Things that I think people are interested in. And so I basically tell a story about each person that deals with one of these types of mental illness, and then so I talk about the illness a little bit, then I kind of move right into a story.
Yeah.
So everything is storytelling in this book.
Yeah. And you've really hit on some of the really big societal issues that we're dealing with today.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, I would love to hear where your first interest started when it came to, being a doctor, exploring that part of things. And, tell us a little more about you.
I wanted to be a doctor since about 5 years old. My family doctor who delivered us, actually my brothers and I, was a friend, being a friend of the family. And for my 5th birthday Christmas present, I got a doctor bag, like a little plastic doctor bag with those plastic instruments. And so after I quickly self-medicated on the candy pills, I basically took that bag everywhere with, checking people's blood pressure with the plastic instruments and listening to their heart with the plastic stethoscope. So that's when I first started getting with the nickname Dr. Paul. Growing up, I was the nickname Dr. Paul.
Nice.
And I think it always kind of stuck. I always really going into all through school. That's just really always what I wanted to do. And I never let up. And that was literally going into college. It was the only thing I wanted. And so I thankfully got into medical school. And so when I was trying to decide what kind of a doctor I wanted to be, I didn't really know at the time when I graduated from medical school. So I chose family medicine because I thought, well, I didn't want to do psych full time or pediatric full time or OBGYN full time. So I kind of was like a mixture with family practice where, you're a family doctor, you kind of do a little of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I started my practice in the early 90s, but I got really interested in mood disorders, psychiatry, and mental health throughout the 90s. New medications came out. I I got more and more interested in the 90s. And then about the year 2000 when I made the decision to just break away from primary care and move into psychiatry full time.
Yeah. Do you think that part of that interest grew out of the patients that you happened to be seeing? Do you know?
I think it really happened because these newer medications came out in the early 90s that just fascinated me. And, because I think people know about the term SSRIs like Zoloft and Lexapro.
Right.
Well, then the first SNRI came out called Effexor. So I started really understanding different neurochemicals. When you balance them, you get different effects. And as a family doctor, I really was appreciating the physical part. I was seeing that people were getting physically better, not just emotionally better.
Mm.
And so during the 90s, I started really figuring a lot out, reading psychiatric textbooks, trying to figure out, why I was doing things in a way that other primary care doctors weren't doing. So basically a lot of it I learned on my own. And in the early 90s or 2000s, when I started writing, I just decided at the time, I need to write this down because who's going to believe what I'm seeing? And if I don't get this down on paper, and that's what started the whole writing process, not knowing that I was going to write 6 books. I just had no idea at the time. I just knew I needed to write. I knew I needed to reach people. And that's what started the whole process for me.
Yeah. I as a reader slash listener, someone consuming written content, if you will, I've always I find myself most drawn to the material that is similar to this, where it's sort of like, I've got to write it down because no one will believe it, where it's like, because it pushes those boundaries of what we do believe, and which so limit us in so many ways, pushing up against the boundaries of science or scientific thought, I should say, not science itself. But that's really fascinating. And I just want to say, without it being a spoiler, but I just love this statement from the epilogue, and I'm going to quote it, and then I want to hear some further thoughts. We cannot see the good that can come from adversity before it hits, or in its first pain and setbacks. However, we can adopt beliefs and attitudes that enable us to endure hardship by getting to the other side with whatever benefits have come through the dark valleys. We do not control the future, nor can we predict what awaits, but we can hold on to our visions and the principles that sustain us in pursuing them. So when you listen back to these of your own words, what comes up for you?
Well, I mean, again, like you said, I've gone through my own difficult times, and I share, in the last section of the book, section 6 of the book, I share my own story as far as difficult times I've gone through, and why did I do it? I just think it thought that people could learn from what I've gone through. I think people who've read the book tell me, now I get why you understand so much because you've suffered yourself, and I've gone through the other side and I've triumphed, and so I wanted to tell my story basically so that people understand that they're not alone when they deal with these things, and also kind of just as just a motivation for people to get help if they need, and I'm not above what they're going through. I'm right there with them, and
Yeah.
but that's why I decided to close the book as I did.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of times that books come out of the very experiences that people have been through, and so bringing your medical expertise and all the research that you've done into this realm of what as well as what you've lived through just really makes it especially powerful. Do you have of the stories that you share in the book and audiobook, are there any that are sort of your favorites or ones that really stand out to you as particularly powerful?
Gosh. which was my favorites. Yeah.
Or even the most extraordinary, maybe, the one, if there's one or more that feel like, wow, no one's going to believe this one.
Well, I mean, there's the schizophrenia patient who got turned around. There's the at the end of section 2, it's called treatment resistant depression. There's a lot of people out there, and so I talk about a woman I treat successfully, but she was kind of a difficult case because I think with doctors, if they're not responding like we think they should respond, we don't know a lot of doctors don't know what to do then. So
Right.
she's a more complex case, and able to kind of get her cure basically. And a lot of these cases are based on real life people that I see. Not fully. I mean, sometimes there's 2 or 3 patients in one story.
All right.
But yeah, I think her story was challenging, and the bipolar patients in that section or chapter 3 of the book. I think the school shooting story is a bit shocking, probably.
Yeah.
And then the sociopath story of a teacher who I won't spoil it, but
Right.
it's basically a talk about sociopathy and how evil comes out with certain people.
Yeah. What would you say makes these issues most important to you as things that you felt like you needed to write about? What was that driving
Just seeing
passion?
the modern problems we face, and I think I kind of that's why I broke it down to the 5. Addiction is obvious. We see that there's people dying of fentanyl overdose, and all it's so common nowadays. So addictions are just a problem that we face as a society for quite a long time. Bullying is my second thing, because there's a lot of bullying that goes on,
Yeah.
internet and media, and not only at schools but on media, on internet, social media. So that's why I tell a story of some people who were bullied at school, and a mother who's bullied by the school board and stuff. And then homelessness is something. I live in California, and so it's a pretty huge problem in California. And then school shootings. I wanted to put that in there because again, it's something that we face in our society, unfortunately. And suicide, the worst outcome of any patient that you see is with they commit suicide. And so I brought those 5 to light because I just thought these are the ones that I think probably a lot of people will be interested in reading about.
Yeah.
A little shock,
Great. Thank
a
you.
little shock factor at that. Just I admit, I wanted the
Right.
shock factor on the cover to make it that pop out. And
Yeah, that's great. Let's take a short pause and we'll come right back. Here at Pro Audio Voices, we love working with authors who have a big goal in mind. They really want to reach out to their audience around the world. We're here to help make that happen. It starts with our pre-production process, where we're evaluating and determining what elements of the audiobook we can leverage to both create an excellent listener experience for your listeners, as well as drawing them to your website to engage with you further. It continues on through the production process, making decisions that will enhance and support your big goals, as well as creating a great listener experience. But we don't stop there. Once the audiobook is live, we move on to helping you market your audiobook with the Audiobook Marketing Program. Come check us out at proaudiovoices.com. To schedule a call to talk about your audiobook project, click on Get Started. So you mentioned that this book, Corona Protocol, is part of a series, or it's connected with the series of books that you've done. Tell us a little bit more about the series as a whole and why you chose to start with this one in audio.
well, I wanted to do this one because I think this book is, I think, my best book. I think it's the most current one as far as for modern times. And so I decided to
Hmm.
this because I think because my first three books I wrote a while ago, and so I guess I wanted to start with this one because this is the one that's selling really well, and with Desiree with Black Chateau who's been doing my marketing, it's gone really well. The sales are great, and so I decided this one for audio because of the fact I want to just continue the trend of sales, and I know that people constantly are telling me about get an audio, do an audiobook and I'll get it then. And that's why I've heard it so many times about I'm waiting for your audiobook and then I'll buy the book. So I thought, okay, I'll do it. I heard I'll do it. And as far as the first three books, I might think about doing those too at some point. Well, as my fourth and fifth book, which haven't come out yet, but they will. So.
Yeah. Well, I want to highlight a few things you said for our listeners because many of our listeners are authors trying to make decisions about their books. So, wanted to highlight what you had said about the importance of having ongoing marketing. That's a big part of your success, and the decision as well to start with your book that is doing the best already is a great decision, I think. Okay, and then. Um, what is something that you would really love for your listeners, your audiobook listeners, readers to take away from this book, this experience?
Well, I hope that people will understand, the how important mental health is, and it's really mental health is really very misunderstood in our society, and
Yeah.
many people don't think of it as a real medical issue. They think of it as, just a weakness, or you just have to try harder. And the fact that there's no blood test for this, there's no CAT scan and we can't see it, makes it feel like, mood disorders are not somehow not real.
Yeah.
So I think what I wanted people to understand is that, of all these problems that I talk about in the book, that there's an answer, and there's an answer. There's a solution. And that's why I really wanted to, with this book, highlight the fact that there's, no matter how difficult things are, if you have the struggling with severe addiction, if you're homeless, if you're, there's answers. If you're contemplating suicide, that there's answers, and that's what I'm hoping that the book provides is the answer people are looking for, and how to treat their very common and very treatable conditions.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I want to talk about a little bit about the audiobook production process for you. You chose Ted Ryan to narrate your audiobook. I personally think he does a fantastic job with it. Is there anything you can share with our listeners about that selection? How you made that decision or, because that's sometimes a question people have.
Well, you sent me, gosh, 24 voices or something like that. So and it was funny because Ted was the first one I listened to, and so I listened to him, and I was doing it with my assistant Leslie and listening to them, and I looked her and I go, wow. I said, that's good. I said, and I was thinking to myself, is that's the first one? It's like, gosh, I mean, am I going to get better than that? So, and then I listened to them, and there was like, I think I had chosen like second and third place, and then I went back and listened again, and I thought, okay, now that I've listened to let me listen to him one more time to make sure. And I listened to him again. And I go, oh, he's it. He's the one for sure. And so I loved his voice, the richness of his voice.
That's great.
Kind of a deep. I wanted a kind of a deeper voice, and but I didn't want to read it myself. And people would say, "Oh, just read it." And I was like, "I don't want to do it. I don't."
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sick of reading. I've read it enough.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Great. And is there anything that about the process that you've been through so far with the audiobook that stands out to you?
Gosh, you guys have been great. She's on her game. your employee Michaela, and so she was great, been great. Now I think it's been really easy and smooth. I've been really happy with the process.
That's great. And just for our listeners, Michaela is the project manager. So that's who he's talking about. And yeah, anything that was surprising in the process?
Well, just never done this before, so it's all kind of surprising. So,
Uh-huh.
but no, I mean, it's just surprising that you guys have really made it easy.
Yeah,
The process has been really easy. So.
great, great. And how can our listeners learn more about you and your writing? Would you share your website?
Yeah, my website is www.dr, like for doctor, drpaulcoronamd.com. And I also want to share that I'm in the second season now of my TV show. I have a TV show out. It's called The Dr. Paul Show. So it can be found on Roku, Amazon Fire, and YouTube. So we've had over 2.1 million views on Roku so far. So and we're about third week into the second season. So there's that. My first 3 books are on my website. The teaching books eventually will come out, but everything else on my website and how to contact me. If you want to be a patient, I am seeing people remotely also. So yeah, so if you need any help or want to be a patient, reach out to us.
Great, great. Yeah, so definitely check out the Dr. Paul Show. And you can find the audiobook on Amplify Audiobooks as well as other audiobook platforms. So we always encourage folks to go to Amplify Audiobooks because it will provide the greatest impact for you and your spending dollars as a consumer and will best support Dr. Paul in his work. So thank you, Paul Corona, author of The Corona Protocol. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Becky. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.